My sister forged my signature on a loan, so I sabotaged her credit and now she can't even get an apartment. There's a special kind of betrayal that festers under the skin. Silent, slow-burning, insidious. It's not the kind that comes with shouting matches or thrown objects. It simmers in the quiet moments, when realization sets in, and the weight of someone else's recklessness presses against your ribs like a concrete vice. I had always been the accommodating one, the fixer, the sibling who smoothed over the cracks my sister carved into every surface she touched. Cassandra had always been wild, charming in a chaotic way, the kind of person who knew how to twist sympathy from strangers and excuse after excuse from the people forced to clean up her wreckage. That person, unfortunately, had always been me. I overlooked the lies in high school, the stolen clothes, the boyfriends she borrowed and discarded like worn-out jackets. I excused the overdraft fees and begged our parents not to cut her off. When she called crying from Miami because she accidentally maxed out a credit card under my name, I covered it. When she needed a couch after skipping 3 months' rent in LA, I gave her the key. And when she asked me to co-sign for a small loan she just needed to get a used car, I refused, firmly but without anger, still trying to teach her boundaries instead of delivering punishment. What I didn't know, what I would later learn with the kind of sickening clarity that comes only with hindsight, was that Cassandra had already taken the loan, and she'd used my name, my signature, my social security number, my credit. I found out when I applied for a mortgage. The bank manager's polite voice turned hesitant. He cleared his throat and said there seemed to be a recent loan, a substantial one, $42,000, delinquent, with missed payments spanning 5 months. I stared at him blankly, the room tilting just slightly as the numbers dug themselves into my skull like needles. I asked him to repeat it. He did. I asked to see the account. He slid the screen toward me, his expression tight with professional discomfort. There was my name, my address, my birth date. But the email was hers. So was the phone number. The rage that bloomed in my chest wasn't loud or theatrical. It was quiet, precise, surgical. I drove home in silence, ignoring her texts, her voicemails. I didn't scream when I confronted her. I showed her the bank printout and waited. She looked at it, then laughed. A soft, cruel laugh that rippled across the room like a slap. "God, calm down," she said, flopping onto my couch like she hadn't just detonated my financial future. "You're always so dramatic. I was going to pay it back eventually. It's not like your credit was that amazing to begin with." Something in me broke. Not in the way glass breaks, quick, clean, and obvious. It broke the way a dam does, quietly first, invisible fractures spreading behind a smooth facade until one day it gives way and floods everything beneath it. I didn't respond to her that night. I watched her leave, still smirking, still high on the confidence that I would, as always, forgive her. Then I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and became someone she'd never met before. I started with research, cold, methodical, relentless. I pulled her name into credit tracking software, dug into databases I used at work for clients, and cross-referenced every financial footprint she'd left like breadcrumbs in the snow. It wasn't just the forged loan. She had 3 unpaid credit cards, one of which she'd opened under an alternate spelling of her name, a buy-now-pay-later furniture scam in Nevada, 2 bounced checks in Georgia, and, my personal favorite, a fake business grant application with my tax ID slapped right onto the form like a signature of guilt. She wasn't just careless. She was criminal. So I stopped being her sister. I became her reckoning. First, I filed a police report. Fraud, identity theft, forgery. I attached documents, screenshots, emails, call logs, the whole grim tapestry. Then I filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission. After that, I contacted the 3 major credit bureaus and initiated a fraud alert, freezing my credit and flagging the accounts in her name. I took it further because I wanted permanence. I submitted identity theft affidavits to every creditor she'd touched, dragging her digital fingerprint into the light. Then I called the landlord she was trying to lease from. She'd put me down as her character reference, a brilliant stroke of irony considering she had none. I smiled as I explained the full situation, calmly, truthfully, devastatingly. I could hear the hesitation crackle over the line like static. The woman thanked me, said she appreciated the transparency. Cassandra's application was declined by the end of the week. Next came the IRS. Her fake business grant had been filed using my number, but the account was still active under hers. I submitted a fraud alert there too, backed by the police report and an affidavit. I didn't even have to make it dramatic. The system, once set in motion, took care of the rest. Penalties, audits, frozen funds, the slow grind of accountability. When she called, sobbing, screaming, raging, I didn't answer. She left voicemail after voicemail, oscillating between furious accusations and pathetic pleading. "You ruined me," she shrieked in one message, her voice thick with tears. "I can't even get a phone plan, let alone an apartment." I played that one twice, smiled both times. By the end of the month, she was living in her ex-boyfriend's garage, begging mutual friends for money and blaming me for overreacting. The beauty of it was, I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The system she'd once gamed now saw her clearly, and it did the work for me. Collections calls, lawsuits, red flags she couldn't bleach clean. I, meanwhile, was rebuilding. Credit restored, debt erased, name cleared. It hadn't been easy, but it was surgical. I had become the scalpel. No longer the bandage, the cleanup crew, the enabler. Just the silent blade that carved justice into the skin of betrayal. And as I watched her spiral, I didn't feel guilt. Not even a flicker. I had forgiven her too many times. This wasn't cruelty. This was arithmetic. She forged my name into a prison. So, I wrote hers into a cage she couldn't unlock. Cassandra had always been a chameleon. She could cry on command, weaponize helplessness like it was a birthright, and mold herself into whatever shape would earn her sympathy. She had perfected the art of self-preservation in every room, adapting with the agility of a parasite that knew how to disguise its feeding. But this time, her usual tricks didn't work. The walls were closing in, not from one direction, but all sides. Her credit report was a battlefield of red alerts and charge-offs, a minefield no landlord, lender, or loan officer would dare cross. And I had never slept better. After years, there was silence. No late-night calls begging for money. No sudden emergencies that always required my time, my wallet, or my name. My life began to take on a cadence that felt like peace. Measured. Intentional. Mind. I stopped flinching when the phone rang. I started making plans without factoring in the inevitable Cassandra crisis. And slowly I began building. Not just credit. Not just stability. But boundaries. Real ones. Reinforced steel. Not picket fences. But she didn't go down quietly. No, Cassandra thrashed. She writhed. Her pride was her last unbroken bone, and she couldn't bear the idea that I had taken a scalpel to her illusion of control. She tried to spin the narrative. Mutual friends began reaching out, voices unsure, messages cautious. Cassandra was telling people I'd framed her, that I'd always been jealous, that I'd stolen from her. The sheer audacity would have been funny if it wasn't so repulsive. "She said you hacked her accounts," one friend texted me. "She claims you're obsessed with ruining her life," another muttered during a strained lunch. I didn't respond to any of it. Let her spin her tales. Let her build castles of sand on the tide of her own denial. I had facts, paper trails, legal documentation thicker than her excuses. What did I care about rumors whispered by those who'd never seen the receipts? Still, her desperation grew louder. She started a GoFundMe titled "Escaping Financial Abuse," painting herself as a misunderstood soul punished by a narcissistic sibling. The photo she chose was one where she looked like a lost little girl. Puffy eyes, soft lighting, a strategically positioned bruise from a long-forgotten accident. Manipulative perfection. Donations trickled in. Not much. A few $100s. Enough to keep her from starving. Not enough to save her. But it wasn't about saving her anymore. It was about lashing out. She was cornered, and cornered animals don't beg. They bite. It was late June when the real retaliation began. Someone tried to access my bank account. The attempt failed, but the alert triggered a chain reaction. I received a call from my bank's fraud department and, as they explained, the attempted login from a familiar city. One Cassandra had most recently visited. I felt that old fury rise. Not hot this time. Cold. Measured. I had given her no access. She had no passwords. But Cassandra was never one to be limited by legality. She knew things, enough to try. I changed everything. Passwords, pins, security questions. I notified the police, added the new attempt to the fraud case already on file. They flagged it, another pebble in the growing landslide of consequences. But I didn't stop there. I began tracking her again. I wanted to know just how far she was willing to sink. Turns out, deep enough to make a second fake identity. She'd registered a new email address, used a variation of her middle name, and was attempting to apply for payday loans, small ones with sky-high interest rates and zero verification. She was trying to create a new digital skin, slithering into it like she could leave the past one behind. I made another report, attached every screenshot, every fraudulent detail. I contacted each of the lenders she applied to and submitted fraud complaints. I didn't scream, I didn't rant. I simply sent the truth, over and over. Ruthless, meticulous, factual. It worked. The fake identity was shut down. The attempted loans were flagged. And Cassandra? She began to realize that every digital move she made was shadowed by me, not watching with love, not hoping for her recovery, but waiting, recording, striking when necessary. One night, she called me. I didn't recognize the number, burner phone clearly, but her voice was unmistakable. It had that cracked glass tone she used when the mask was slipping. "You're destroying me," she hissed. No hello, no introduction, just venom. "Do you even realize what you're doing? I'm your sister." "You were," I said, "until you made me your victim. Until you decided my name was just another tool for your convenience." There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "You act like you're better than me." "No," I replied, my voice a scalpel. "I am better than you, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Click. I blocked the number. The next day, I filed for a restraining order. Not out of fear, but finality. I wanted legal distance to match the emotional chasm already carved between us. I wanted her out of my life, not just practically, but permanently. And as I stood at the courthouse steps, the order in my hand, I felt no guilt, only clarity. I wasn't her sister anymore. I was the line she could no longer cross. Some endings aren't explosions. They don't arrive with fire and fury or grand confrontations in courtrooms. Sometimes the most complete ending is the one that comes in silence. Not the empty kind that lingers in grief, but the heavy, decisive kind, like the air just after a guillotine falls. That's the kind of ending Cassandra earned. In the weeks following the restraining order, the world around her shrank with precision. The legal system didn't care about her tantrums or tears. It cared about documentation, and I had provided it in excess. Police reports, emails, fraud alerts, bank statements, call logs, a chronology of deception that no amount of charm could unravel. The judge granted the order without hesitation. 1 year, no contact, no messages, no proximity. The terms were clear, and her options were none. It should have been the final stroke, but Cassandra was nothing if not persistent in her delusions. For a while, she attempted to circumvent the legal distance with oblique gestures, third-party messages, cryptic social media posts, even vague, guilt-laced letters left in my mailbox. Each one was carefully curated to suggest innocence, to project sorrow, as if the weight of her choices had finally dawned on her. But I didn't take the bait. I submitted every violation to the authorities, filed each item neatly with the growing stack of infractions, and moved forward. It was the last time she tested the edges. After the third warning and a threat of jail time, even Cassandra learned fear. That fear, for the first time in her life, was stronger than her ego. She disappeared from my immediate reality like a stone dropped into a black lake, silent, untraceable, irrelevant, and I thrived. With her gone, the slow process of true healing began. It wasn't a fairy tale transformation. It was granular, built from morning routines and quiet victories. I paid off what remained of the damage she had done, cleared my name with the last of the credit agencies, negotiated with the bank to have the forged loan wiped after the fraud report was finalized and closed. The relief wasn't loud. It was steady, a background hum of control returning, inch by inch, to the hands it had been stolen from. My career, long hindered by the constant drag of her chaos, finally accelerated. Promotions came. I moved into a loft that didn't echo with old family memories. I began to travel again, freely, without worrying what mess might be waiting in my absence. I started investing, not just financially, but emotionally, in friends, in experiences, in peace. Peace became a priority, not a luxury. And then, One day, I received a letter. Not from Cassandra. From a woman named Amanda Cho, an attorney representing a regional tenant advocacy center. Apparently, Cassandra had applied for emergency housing under false pretenses, claimed to be a victim of domestic abuse, produced a doctored police report that included my name as the aggressor. But the attorney, thorough and diligent, cross-checked the claims and reached out to verify the documentation. She found the real police report, the real restraining order, the fraud complaints. She reached out not to accuse me, but to confirm Cassandra's pattern. "Your name has come up in several fraudulent filings," she wrote. "We'd like to add your statements to our case." That was the final piece, the last window into the life Cassandra had tried and failed to sculpt from the ashes of her own ruin. She had not changed. She had merely migrated her manipulation. But it no longer touched me. I signed the statement, notarized it, and mailed it in without hesitation. After that, she vanished from my radar entirely. Friends stopped mentioning her name. Family finally understood, without question or illusion, why I had drawn the line. Even our parents, once her most stubborn defenders, had gone quiet. There was no longer any room left for denial. They saw the truth not because I told them, but because Cassandra had left it carved into public record, cold and undeniable. She became a footnote, a cautionary tale. Years passed. I eventually bought a home, a real home, not a rental, not a borrowed apartment propped up with financial duct tape, but a solid, sun-drenched space that bore my name alone on the deed. I filled it with quiet things, soft rugs, warm lights, books that weren't interrupted by late-night emergencies. I adopted a dog, learned to sleep without checking my phone for crisis texts, learned that trust was something I could rebuild, not with Cassandra, but with myself. The final closure came on a Tuesday. I received a letter from a credit agency informing me that the last flagged account in Cassandra's fraud had been resolved. Her attempts to use my name were officially frozen, blocked by a firewall of alerts and legal red tape that would follow her into every financial institution she dared approach. My name, clean again. My record, restored. My life, untainted. And that was it. No dramatic goodbye, no teary reunion, no last confrontation under a stormy sky. Just a file closed, a page turned, a bridge burned, and the ashes scattered. In the end, I didn't need revenge to feel victorious. I didn't need to see her punished or paraded in shame. The real triumph was this: I was no longer hers to hurt.